Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this three-part series of short videos leading with decency. The first video, we're going to talk about common pitfalls that we see with new leaders or even seasoned leaders. The second video will be leadership types, and the third, we'll finish it out with strong leadership strategies. Common pitfalls, the first one we often see is the command and control default, meaning that the style of leadership is just more authoritarian or autocratic. Just do as I say, no questions asked. This is more common in organizations where at some point command and control is a necessity. So, for instance, in emergency situations, emergency workers or police officers where you have a very rigid structure, a hierarchy where people report to somebody else. And during emergency situations, it's really important that those people quickly follow directions of the people that they report to and those leaders, because if they don't, people can get hurt or worse. But what can happen is it doesn't have to be even, a police department or a hospital. It could get often even see it in like facilities or a loading dock, where again there's an element of danger involved, often in the kind of work that's being done. But the problem is that because that command and control is important in certain situations, leaders can often make it the default. So that command and control, it happens in all the situations. And this is really a problem because it doesn't allow for good collaboration, good communication, and more strategic work with the team. And eventually, that authoritarian kind of leadership style starts to wear on people because they don't have any input. Later on, we're going to talk about some different styles that leaders can call on rather than just defaulting to command and control. The second element or pitfall that we see here is micromanagement. And a lot of these are very closely related. They're sort of intertwined with one another. The micromanaging is a common complaint that we hear, and sometimes it's warranted, sometimes it's not. And the complaint is warranted, sometimes it's not. But also, sometimes micromanaging is actually warranted in a situation where, for instance, a leader or manager is new to an organization, and that person might need to sort of keep a close eye on how people are doing their work so that she can learn how the business is being done in that organization. Or if somebody is new to that team, the manager or leader might also want to keep an eye on how that person is doing. This can be really frustrating for people who may have a lot of experience in the field and doing that type of work for years, and then suddenly having somebody sort of looking over their shoulder, or maybe literally looking over their shoulder, that can feel oppressive and frustrating. Uh, the important thing to understand here as a leader and manager is that you need to communicate why you're doing it. So if this is your default, if you're always sort of micromanaging people, then that's a real problem, right? You should provide some autonomy to people and trust that they know what they're doing. But if it's a situation where it really does warrant micromanaging, explain to those people that are reporting to you why you're doing it. For instance, this is a new process, it's a new project that we're doing. I need to, it's my job to keep an eye on it right now. I need to learn, you need to learn. So we're going to have to be in close collaboration. When we talk about some strong leadership strategies, we'll look into some different tools that will help people understand why somebody, a direct report, might feel like that a manager or supervisor is micromanaging. Next one here. If there's one thing that is fundamental to, sort of sinking or making a dysfunctional organization, it's distrust. And this is really a toxic thing that we see a lot in organizations, and often it comes from these other two things that we were just looking at. People feel like they are just being controlled, and they don't have control over their own environment, and they're being micromanaged. then you start to feel a lot of distrust for that leader because they feel that the leader doesn't trust them, and it starts to really consume an organization. And coupled with that is the one right after that, the poor communication. It's important to keep channels of communication open. Sometimes you'll hear that you want to have transparency with everything to build trust, and that's maybe not a good way of looking at it, because often when you are creating a lot of transparency, it means that you don't trust what they're doing. So, for instance, if you want to, as a manager, I want to see everybody's calendar, what they're doing. I don't want to have any blind spots. That's not building trust. That's kind of the opposite. It means that you don't really trust them. But on the other hand, you do want to be transparent for the most part, as a leader, in how you are making certain decisions. You want to have open communication channels and a solid dialogue going forward, especially in times of change where you really should have increase your cadence of communication with your team. Another thing that really causes a lot of distrust is when there's any amount, a level of pushback from direct reports or staff or team to the leader, sort of questioning why something is done, and the immediate reaction from the leaders is defensiveness, putting up a wall and saying, don't question what I'm doing, just do what I say. When you're building up those walls, then their assumption is you're trying to hide something. And of course, that creates a level of distrust as well. People want to have at least some understanding of why the team is going in a certain direction, right? So to be defensive is going to create the distrust and make people feel that they are not part of the team. And then the other thing that happens is when that leader is putting up walls and it feels like he can uh, sort of make arbitrary decisions on his or her own, then that's when unethical behavior starts to happen, because you're creating these decisions in this sort of echo chamber of one, and there's nobody questioning what you're doing, and so it's pretty easy to start doing things that are unethical. When you have that communication with peers or direct reports, then there's this check, and it's a great way to make sure that you're not just justifying wrongdoing on your own. It happens, and it's nobody. It's rarely we see people saying, "I'm going to make this unethical decision." They're justifying the decisions on their own because nobody is there to question those decisions. So these are some of the common pitfalls we see. In the next couple of videos, we'll look at different leadership styles and how they relate to some of these pitfalls. And then in the third video, we'll go on to some strong leadership strategies that also address these pitfalls and how they also relate, again, to the different leadership styles. Thank you very much.